We'll make it happen with my laid shirt on. Everyone's like, laid. 5 people must have asked me, what does laid mean? It means legally armed in Detroit. I tell people all the time, I want you to be laid. Coming here today, I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you a concern that I have regarding one of our elected representatives here in the state of Michigan who has some pet legislation that he's been working on for at least a couple of years. And I first got wind of this proposed legislation maybe about a month ago. I was asked to be a participant in a local talk show back home in Detroit with the local Fox affiliate. Back in Detroit, there's this TV show, you may have heard of it. It's called Let It Rip, and you guys probably don't get way out here in East Lansing. But in any case, this representative had some legislation that on its face, it seemed very noble. It seemed like something that people should support. With the local news station, you know, I do a lot of gun rights advocacy back home in Detroit. They asked me to come up to the station and hear what this legislation was and to give my feedback on it, to let them know what I thought about it. This topic is called extreme risk protection orders. And I really hadn't heard of an extreme protection order. So I was like, well, you know what, I'll come on down to the station and I'll listen to the presentation and I'll see what this extreme risk protection order stuff is all about. And so I get there to the station and there's this elected representative, his name is Representative Wittenberg. He presented this legislation and basically he said everything that was good and great about it. He said, hey, if there's a person out there who is a danger to the community and he needs to be addressed, well, this is some legislation that will make people safe and it will keep people from being injured, because sometimes there's people out there that do bad things and because they haven't officially done anything, well, you know, that just creates a situation in which people can get hurt. So I said, well, you know, on its face it might be good, but I asked him face to face. I said, well, what protections exist in this legislation, this extreme risk protection order, you know, do we have that someone would not be falsely accused? You know, and we live in a country in which, I hate to say it, but marriage and relationships, they're about a 50-50 proposition. And a lot of times when love goes bad, love goes south, a lot of times a lot of false, intentionally erroneous, and just flat out lies are being told and spread about a person such that they can get this person out of the home and do the whole legal process. And so he told me to my face, he was like, look, due process is into the process. Due process will ensure that a person will not have their rights violated. So I left it at that. However, I went home and I did my research. I fired up my internet browser of choice and I started looking into this extreme risk personal protection order legislation that Representative Wittenberg is promoting. And it is, in one word, I think it's awful. I think it is a threat to liberty. I think it is some legislation that would be extremely negative for all of us if it ever saw the light of day, and thank God it's not being considered currently, but he's been working hard all across the state trying to get everyone's ear bent to listen to what he's talking about. These extreme risk personal protection orders, if one is entered against the person, it has the ability to have their gun rights immediately taken away from them. And this is a situation in which you can have your rights taken away from you without even being notified from it. A person can go to a judge, can enter in a request for an extreme risk personal protection order, and they can have a court proceeding with the judge in secrecy without the accused even knowing about it. They can show up to your home, knock on the doors, and come in like stormtroopers and take your firearms away from you, and then later on down the road, you then have the right to come back and prove that you're not guilty of a crime. I think that is something that is totally unacceptable. When I first heard of this legislation, I was like, what country is this? How is it that an elected representative can propose some legislation for a person to accuse you of the most dreadful, most awful things, and then they actually have a court proceeding in secrecy without you knowing about it, coming to your home, taking your guns, depriving you of your Second Amendment right, and then they may give you the opportunity to come back a few weeks later and then prove that you are innocent. To me, that is outright evil, and it should never see the light of day. That's why I'm here today, to tell you about these extreme risk personal protection orders. And if anyone ever suggests to you that is something that we should consider, I have one word for you to tell them, and that word is no.
That's right.
Extreme risk personal protection orders have no business, especially in the state of Michigan, being enacted. One of the questions I asked Representative Wittenberg face-to-face at Fox 2 back home in Detroit, I said, well, what protections do we have that someone wouldn't enter a false extreme risk personal protection order against someone? He said, well, you know, there's a provision in the law, you know, and we've gotten that covered. So I took his word for it. So I went home, fired up my browser, and here's what the proposed penalty for someone telling a lie on you to get an extreme risk personal protection order against you in secrecy. They may be held in contempt. Okay? They may. And so, not being a lawyer, and I didn't really know anything about, you know, being held in contempt of court, I did a survey. I contacted 6 different attorneys, and I said, well, what does that mean? Does this person, are they going to be arrested? Are they going to go to jail? I mean, we're talking about someone going to court, telling a lie on you, and then the government comes in and takes your guns away from you without adhering, without due process. To me, I don't know about you all, but to me, that's a pretty big thing. That's a serious thing. And every single attorney that I talked to said, well, it'll probably end up being a slap on the wrist. And I thought that that made this extreme risk personal protection order one thing, and made it evil. And I do not support these extreme risk personal protection orders. And if anyone tells you that that is something that we need in the state of Michigan, you must tell that person that they are extremely misinformed and that they need to educate themselves on the process. Say no to extreme risk personal protection orders. And with that, I want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak, and you all be great and have an awesome day.
Yes.
Going on TV in Detroit, defending our rights. How about that? Thank you very much, my friend.